So in the previous video, in the first part of this series, we talk about some of the configuration, some of the things that you need to do in Advisor to get full value of it. Now, when you go into closing reason priority, which is again a key thing that Advisor knows to tune itself to your environment, you only have these basic reasons to it, right? How do you create additional reasons for closing? Well, you need to go here on the admin tab. If you scroll to the top, there's a section here, custom offense close reasons. So for example, I added this particular reason. Let me show it to you. When an event is actually passed already into resilient, let's say I forget about it, you can also have resilient to close it automatically, but that's one that I added. In the same way, you can click here, add, and add your different reasons. And then when you go here into your offenses and you take any offense, and when you close it, you're going to have more choices besides the standard one. You get these custom ones. And that, again, that's feedback that Advisor is going to use to know better how you operate and what's important and what is not important for you. And this is particularly double relevant when you have somebody, your senior guy, training your QRadar Advisor system, and then when you have a junior person coming in, well, all that knowledge is going to be available for that junior person to work with the tool. You'll see that Advisor also helps you protect key people. Let's say your executive that are big targets of phishing campaigns, or different people, and those are high value users. Where you set those up, it's not intuitive to figure that out, but when you go into the user behavior tool, it actually, and you click on these rules and tuning, you get to this page, and in the access and authentication there is these reference sets: UBA, executive user, and executive assets. And the asset, I'm pretty sure that they also contribute to the asset, the critical asset that I mentioned before. But the users, at least you have in here. So I added this guy, Ronnie Shire. So Advisor knows that this guy is actually critical, and that's what is gonna provide you with is when Advisor shows the graph of a particular user, and more on this later. I'm going to go into big details on the graph. You will see, well, this is not the offense I wanted to show. And actually, this is the one. As you see here, there are other users. At least, let's see how many users we have. And sometimes these graphs can become kind of big, so people, there are only two. So this Jory Avery, but notice that Ronnie is surrounded by that double circle because he's a member of the high value users by virtue of having its name put into that reference set. So now that we are in the chart, how do I best read the QRadar Advisor chart? There's a lot of goodies that you need to be watchful. Might not be evident that they are. First of all, what is that yellow thing? Well, that's a starting point. In this particular case, that's the IP address of the machine where the whole infection started. So if you have this chart is, I wouldn't say it's not too dense, but if you have something that is very, very dense and you don't know where to begin, look for the yellow, and that's the either IP, user, machine, whatever, where the whole thing started with, right? Also, one thing that some people are not fully aware of is that every one of the actual lines, regardless of the color, notice that you have directionality here. They say, well, from this IP, the guy got into this particular hash. And if you click on the actual arrow, you get the details of where that information was actually obtained. And you see that this came from a semantic endpoint technology that detected this. That was the entry point for that. Okay, so directionality, and you can click on any one of those arrows to get the information. In this particular case, this is information that he went to that site that is not good, and is blue code, the one that provided that info. Okay, so that's a piece of information that you get on the chart. Now, to understand the meaning of the icons, probably the best place is here. And this is a filter. For example, you give me all the assets that you found. I mean, these are the assets. And by the way, this actually connects into the asset database of QRadar. So when there are servers involved, I'll see if I find an offense later with servers. You'll see instead of a desktop type of computer, you see like a three machines on a rack type of thing icon. So it's different. It's not particularly shown in here. These are some of the icons. Now, as you have seen, people or users, when they are surrounded, that means that they are in a reference set for important people. When you have URLs that are surrounded by a circle, double circle, this is just a blue circle actually in here, it is because they are in a cluster. There's more than one that actually is shown in here. And you know that in every icon you can click and you get from advisor what the concern for that particular item is. In this particular case is low. And if they are, there's additional data in there. But if you click onto something that is malicious, let me close it here and go into this one, you can always get this one is actually medium concern, and you can always get what is it that advisor use to come to that conclusion. In this particular case is data from VirusTotal. And you'll see, when you use this, you'll see how many threat intelligence sources advisor is connected. There are very many that I've never seen in my life until I go and look into the actual data. Let me click here to get things back to normal. I'm going to not just look at the domain, but look at everything else. This is an interesting one, campaigns. Okay, well, when you get an attack, it is very important to get, for example, what type of campaign is this behind? Is SIG-REG? Is this, that? So and you get same information in here. In this particular case, is from Train Micro. That's what the icon with an A stand for. This is actually very important. Threat actors, right? If you look at the threat actors in here, I'm actually clear all observables. Threat actors, they are 5. And you can actually click on every one of them as you have done before. This is of a high relevance. In this particular case is CrowdStrike, the one that provides that information. You can grab the link and click on it and get the information if you get more details. But I'm sure that at this point you will be quite happy with what you get. I mean, you get we talk about URLs, AV signatures. I think that those are self-explanatory. You get hashes. What else is relevant in here? And this is more on that later. But this is related investigation. So this is what other offenses can I find, and what other users can I find on those triangles? When you get the people in a triangle, again, this is Ronnie Shire, but in this particular case, it was R. Shire, the ID by you know that when, particularly from UBA, you get information from the Active Directory, a user may have 10 user IDs. This is the actual name of the person, and this is the user ID that was used in this particular incident. And in this particular case, you say, well, there is another offense, offense 92, and you can actually click here and go to it directly, which actually is also related with data from Ronnie Shire. Now, it's actually, now that you know the icons and basically what they mean, and by the way, if you have any one of these assets, forgot to mention, a server or a desktop or whatever, and is on those references that I showed you before of the high value critical assets, then they will be surrounded by a similar circle like this one in here. Okay, now to zoom in here, well, it's simple. You go to the point where you wanted the zoom to begin, and you actually go from there. Now the best way when you get, particularly when you get a graph that is kind of dense, I'm going here into the left and scroll, the way I go about is I start with the gray, and the gray is the data that was included in the offense. Okay, so these are the logs and flows that were part of the offense, IP addresses. So, and we saw that Blue Code, Symantec got us these pieces. Okay, so this is nothing new other than the fact that you get in red when something has maliciousness in it, and that's a kind of a value. But Advisor begins to show its true value when you, let me bring the blue in. What's the blue in? This is very important. The blue is Advisor goes into his corporate knowledge. I call this the Facebook of the bad guys, and find any asset, any IOC, any IP address, any URLs, any campaigns and bad actors and all these things that we see here that have any relationship with the items, the IOCs that were part of the offense. In this particular case, this IP address, this URL, and that hash. And notice the blue stuff that it found. Notice that none of this stuff was part of your offense data. And it will take you a great deal of time to go into VirusTotal and find all these and play with a notepad and play the silly copy-paste game. Advisor saves you a tremendous amount of time by giving you all those IOCs related in a way to this that has 1, 2, or 3 degrees of separation with the assets found on the offense, and also has a level of toxicity and relevance that is big enough for it to bring it into the relationship. You may have something that is related, it's only 1 degree of separation, but the toxicity and the relevance of that IOC is too low, then Advisor won't make the graph too distracting, and it will not show you that. So that is the blue. Now, as I had mentioned in other videos, when you click here on export and you go into reference sets, you can put into those reference sets, feed QRadar with those IOCs, so you will be 100% sure that if you have rules that work with those reference sets, and if anyone in your organization touches from here into the future any one of those IOCs, bang, you're going to get an offense that fire. Because if QRadar wasn't aware of those IOCs before, now they will, because you have exported those URLs, those hashes, or those domains, and actually, you select what is it that you want to export to those. Okay, so this is a way of enhancing your Advisor from here into the future to be better prepared, and that's very important, because you know that the bad guys, when they find a crack in your organization, they're not going to give up. They're going to keep on coming. So this is a good way of getting one step ahead of the bad guys. Now, what Advisor does next is actually very, very important and clever. It's going to take all the blue stuff that we saw, and it's going to go into your logs and flows, and it's going to perform an AQL search 24 hours before and 24 hours into the future. Say that in case that you are investigating an offense that fired yesterday. So it's going to go there and say, well, do I see in the logs and flows and on the reference sets that I showed you before in the configuration for Advisor, do I find into any one of those 3 things anything that is related to these IOCs that I found in blue? And this is extremely valuable. For example, in this particular case, we see that this guy Jory Every is actually by this going into this workstation and this URL and this IP, and notice that none of this is part of my offense, but it's related. It has a 1 degree separation with this IP, which was part of my offense. So this tells me that Joe Every was also hit by something similar to what Ronnie Shire has been hit. And it might be worthwhile to go into UBA and search what Jory has been doing to understand how he also was found part of that. That is very, very important, because again, you can do the AQL searches, but it will take you some effort to get there. Also, as I kind of briefly mentioned before, Advisor also goes into your, let me zoom here from the top as I go here and I expand, goes and finds into your offenses, the offenses that you have active or closed, remember that configuration, and it's going to find and say, well, do we have an offense that is related to this. And this is very important, because let's say that you see an incident that happens last week, you saw it at that time, you kind of forgot about it, you don't have it in the upper priority of your front head, and let's say that today there's another incident. Not only advisor will find the relationship that I mentioned before, but also will tell you, hey, you know what? This thing that you saw last week, this stuff is related to it. And it's actually great, because you have something that reminds you all those things automatically. Two more things before I finish here. I'm sorry for taking this long. I'd like to keep my videos shorter than this. Couple of things in here. For example, this simple one, this copy insights. When you click on it, it's going to take all this information and put it in the clipboard. And when you don't have, when you have Resilient, then all this information is sent to Resilient when you pass the information. But if you have a ticketing system and you want to actually kind of manually get that information, well, this is a quick way of getting all those pieces of info and putting them into the clipboard for you. Here we talk about high value asset. There's one piece I haven't spoken about, and this MITRE attack and techniques. How does QRadar makes this connection? And this, to show you that, I want to go into the Use Case Manager app and go here, and as you know, and I have separate videos that talk about this, in this app you can not only see how you are doing in terms of coverage of the MITRE attack framework, but it is here where you make the match. You're going to find a particular rule in here, and if you want it to map to a particular tactic and technique in MITRE, but this is the place where you will actually create all those things, change those things, change the priority, the mapping confidence is the word that I was looking for. You just say whether the confidence high, medium, or low into it, and whether that is enabled. So you can actually look for, you can filter here by the rule, or you can look by tactic, by technique, and then do the mapping. Well, advisor is fully aware of this information. In fact, it uses that as part of the data that is is also part of the definition that I started this video, these two videos with, which is the determination of whether something is high or low priority. I hope that this gives you a better run out of what advisor is and how you can maximize the value of the tool.